Gilmore of Virginia, who did great things with the budget in Virginia, but hasn't been heard from very much until recently when you announced your candidacy for president as number 16 or 17 out of however many. And you're obviously here in New Hampshire to try and get engaged with the local activists.
We are, and I'm pleased to be here today. This is obviously a conservative group very focused on American rights, and I believe in the Constitution and our rights under the Constitution, so it's a good match for me to be here to speak to them.
Excellent.
And did you have when have you spoken? Are you coming up? Have you already?
I just spoke a few minutes ago to the group.
Oh, that's right.
Right, and it was I think very successful. But I had an opportunity to talk about my message, and was covered by the press as well, who I think then will rebroadcast that. But the focus of the talk was on the fundamental issues that I think that are facing the country today. Now, I started by talking about my experience in foreign policy, which the other governors and former governors just don't have. I'm a United States Army veteran.
Yeah.
I have the experience of being the national chairman of the National Commission on Terrorism. I was stationed in Europe during the Cold War. I was the governor during the 9/11 attack, degree in foreign policy, and I have a focus there that the other governors simply just don't have. But the main point that I'm trying to make here today is to talk about the United States economy and the need for the growth of the economy and why the Obama-Clinton administration has been deliberately hurting the economy. The fact that they're trying to get Medicaid expanded and other benefit programs, and John Kasich did that. The fact that education, I was an education governor, and I believe education starts at the local level and then moves from there to support at the state level. But I'm against the Bush proposal for Common Core, and I think most people in New Hampshire are. I spoke on behalf of gun rights. Even in the face of these terrible tragedies we're seeing, the president is determined to remove gun rights in this country, and I'm standing for them as a board member of the NRA. Internet freedom. I chaired the National Commission to keep taxes off the Internet. John Kasich is in support of taxes on the Internet. So I'm contrasting now with some of these other candidates who are running for president.
Sure.
On some of the central issues.
So why do you think then that the party leadership, which was for Bush before it was for Kasich, basically, is choosing candidates that are not merely a little loose on some of the issues, but in some cases are actively against policies which the base would choose?
I believe that the candidate has to be a conservative, but one with a proven track record of being able to govern as a conservative. And I am one of the few, if not the only one, even of the group of 15. I do not believe that the Republican Party will, in the end, choose these establishmentarian, moderate type of candidates, because I don't think they're reflective of the thinking of the people of New Hampshire by a country mile, as a matter of fact.
Oh, we get that, but every time we think that they can't do this, they somehow manage to squeeze them through with a plurality because the conservative vote gets too divided. Now, of course, you're part of that division of many parts, but and I don't take this the wrong way. I'm not criticizing you for wanting to be in it. Everybody who gets in has something to bring to the party. And we're just interested to hear that. But I think the party leadership almost hopes for this to happen so that they can push through their chosen one, and then the activists are looking at this saying, "How do we end up with this person again?"
Well, I might look at it a little different way, Mike.
Yeah.
The moderates at this point are sort of dividing up their votes. You got Bush in the race. He's not doing so great.
Christie
is not getting any progress. Kasich is, kind of the new face on the block as the governor of Ohio, but every day he says something that's inappropriate. So I think that they're going to divide up their votes. Meanwhile, on the conservative side, there are some conservatives in this race who simply cannot win the election. Ted Cruz can't win this election. Donald Trump is not a serious candidate. Rand Paul is just about gone now after starting hot and now moving down to virtually nothing. At some point, the conservatives are going to have to find a candidate who can actually be the president of the United States. I'm that candidate, but I have to be here long enough for people to see me and hear me.
Okay, and that's fine. I believe you had a great fiscal record in Virginia, and we'd like to hear a little more about that. And then I'll shut up and let Steve go with his question.
We'll do the fiscal thing first, and then we'll
Well, look, guys, here's the point. When I ran for governor of Virginia, I ran on a tax cut. Have you seen, you see a lot of people talk about a tax cut. I said I would cut the car tax in Virginia. The difference is that I actually governed that way. And I put it through the legislature, which was Republicans and Democrats supported it, and I got it done. Now what I know the problem is in the United States is that we have a lousy economy. We have an economy where young people can't get opportunities in life. They're having to move away from home in order to start careers. We know older workers are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs. We know that people are working part-time that want to work full-time, and something has to be done. And I've put together a specific program with conservative economists in order to regrow the economy of the United States. Change the personal tax code to 10, 15, and 25% and grant a tax cut. Take all commercial activities, small and large, and combine it together under one tax code and charge it only 15%. Get rid of the death tax. If you do that with a couple of more tweaks, you will actually spur the economy and create real growth, and that must be our mission as conservatives and as Americans.
Yeah, and you chose your three rates, and those three rates are pretty much mirroring what Reagan brought in his tax reforms in the 80s, which did the country a whole lot of good. And I particularly applaud your choice to bring our corporate taxes in line with the rest of the world and a lot cheaper than some of the world.
Just so.
Which is excellent. When we spoke to you previously, you said that you didn't think a flat tax would ever fly. So you're obviously proposing to get where you want to go in what appear to be sensible increments. Is that in fact your approach to incrementally get to a minimalist tax code? And in fact, are you for closing out as many loopholes as possible and removing as many regulations and rules as possible from the tax code? Because that's the biggest problem with the tax code is its size.
You're right, Mike. As a matter of fact, the growth code works because you eliminate most of the special deductions and the special credits and the special things that have been built into the code over the years. But in the elimination of all those things, you do get a reward. And the reward is you must insist on lowering the tax rate to at least an average of about 15%. We buy the rate down by doing that, and that's exactly right. You're very perceptive. That's the way that it needs to be done.
But you don't think we can get to a flat tax in any kind of realistic scenario?
I don't think we ought to be religiously, slavishly attached to some sort of term. I think that what we need to do is put together a growth program that will cut taxes and spur growth. I don't care if we call it a flat tax or a vertical tax or an upside-down tax. I don't care what you call it. The main thing to do right now is to spur the growth of the economy of the United States and get people employed, and that's what creates more revenue.
Absolutely gotcha. And as always, lowering taxes increases revenue, something the Democrats not merely don't care about, they're not interested. It's about using the tax to punish people, not about maximizing the revenue by spurring growth, and that's the biggest difference between Democrats and let me not say Republicans, conservatives.
I believe so. I believe that the party will pick a conservative. We should pick a conservative. If we don't pick a conservative, we're not going to win this election. I am that conservative. I'm the proven article here.
We had a lengthy discussion about foreign policy before you came in the room. We were talking about the Middle East mostly. We were talking about Ron Paul and Rand Paul and some isolationist ideas. We happen to believe that while we don't need to be in wars all the time and we don't need to have bases all over, we need to have a strong defense and a good footprint. We need to have a Navy that's out there. We need to have subs. We need to have a presence. How do you feel about that, our defensive posture internationally? And
no other candidate in this race has the experience in foreign policy that I have. No other candidate. There are some governors in the race, just as I am a former governor, but they don't have any foreign policy experience. Here's the answer to your point. Yes, we need to have an active, involved national security and a strong national security and strong presidential leadership. We don't need to go in and invade every country across the world with our armies and try to remake everything, and I think that's where Senator Graham would like to take us. But it's worse to go into a neo-isolationist type of approach the way that Rand Paul would. That it almost guarantees us that we will be in a war which we may win and we may not win or we may emerge from. We can't do that. We have to be active. Therefore, I believe that, number one, we have to have strong, decisive American leadership that stands for American strength and American principles. Secondly, I think the sequester has to come off the defense budget, and we have to begin to go back to rebuilding our military. Third, I think that we have to rebuild our Navy. Right now, the Navy is reducing and reducing and reducing, and everybody across the world sees it. That's why the Chinese are beginning to move forward in the Pacific. There's danger everywhere, and we have to begin to rebuild the Navy. And finally, frankly, the Middle East is out of hand. And we have to be very careful about this. The Russians are now there because of American weakness. It's extremely dangerous what's going on. I believe we have to form a Middle East NATO. In fact, I called for it months ago and continue to stress it, and I'm glad to be on Granite Grok having a chance to stress it.
Well, thank you.
We build a Middle East NATO where we combine with our traditional allies, the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Emirates. There's a role for the Israelis in this. There's an essential role for Turkey, which, by the way, suffered terrorist explosions last night.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, we read about that.
Yep, this is the place where we can build a collective security and then restrain Iran's expansion, which we have encouraged, and then also turn our attention to ISIS.
Right. Well, let me just ask really quickly. So you named a whole bunch of places. Would that, in fact, be an anti-Shiite alliance? It just so happens to sound like one, because I think I don't know whether you ever get both versions of Islam to get on the same page, to get signed up to the same organization. Do you see any future in trying to have like a mutual peace organization which includes all branches of Islam? Or do you think that, in fact, what you said there, our traditional allies, which are basically all Sunni, is where we have to go?
But ISIS is Sunni. And this is not a successful approach to try to divide up the Shiites and the Sunnis, because it'll create a war, and we'll end up being attacked by both. It seems to me that the right thing to do is to behave in a responsible way, treat these people as countries. Mm-hmm. They are countries.
Yep.
And to combine them as countries and restrain the country of Iran, and to utilize the other countries to do that, and to try to minimize the inter-Muslim fight to the greatest extent we can.
All right, we're about to bump into lunch here.
That's terrific.
So we're going to finish it up.
Tell us a couple of key things. First of all, how can people reach you or look you up? In other words, what's your website? Who's your chief contact here in New Hampshire? And we're going to see a lot of you the next few weeks.
That's exactly right. First of all, I'm really pleased to be on Granite Grok. And our website is gilmoreforamerica.com, and you can sign up there. I have a local representative in New Hampshire. Ann Smith's doing a great job for me here, and she'll be on the ground looking for opportunities for me to speak and participate and win the primary support of the people of New Hampshire. I got to start getting votes here in New Hampshire. I'm reaching out to them now through Granite Grok.